alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to A Live After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is, well, a fascinating character. Well, he's a human being, not a character, but you get the idea, people. This author has, well, I mean, he is extremely accomplished in a bunch of fields, is what it sounds like to me. We've been chatting for a little bit before the show started, just to be perfectly honest. I'm not even really sure how to... see, this is why I don't normally do the intro, folks, because it's very difficult for me. I was like, where do I even start? He's been in music. He's been a teacher. He obviously writes books. So, there's a lot there. Yeah, and we don't have to get into the whole thing where he got embarrassed by Madonna or whatever. But we can, because that's what where this show goes where it goes. So welcome to the show, Nzondi. Nzondi?
Hey,
jeez, I screwed it up already.
Tim, you said it perfect. Thanks.
Oh, great.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. So, like I said, you write books. What are your books about? Quick, but just before we get started, what genre do you write in, I guess,
I write in science fiction and horror, and I guess, mix a little fantasy in with that as well. I just love horror. I love writing about horror and all of the elements of horror.
Yeah, actually, I think who was it? Maurice Broaddus I think he got his start in horror. He's kind of a friend of mine from the convention circuit. He showed up here in Minnesota a few years ago, and he's not. And I just think I'm not sure if you're aware of him. He's a pretty contemporary author right now. I mean, he's killing in a lot of places. But but anyway, it was interesting to me that I don't know why, but a lot of African American authors I've met are into horror, and I think I don't know why that is. Maybe I just haven't met enough African American authors. That's probably true. But there's something to... But even when I read books, like I was reading Nnedi Okorafor's Who Fears Death, and even though that's a sci-fi novel, it is extremely gritty in a lot of ways. It's so dark that, I mean, I wonder if there's something about just generally seeing the world in a more, I guess, I'd say more authentic way, that the world can be very dangerous. Is an interesting. It seems to be a trend there. But anyway, that's just my experience, and it's limited. But what am I saying?
No, I mean, I agree. I believe that most of the, well, actually, I guess it would be half and half. I know quite a few African American authors that do science fiction. Oh, let me rephrase that. The African American authors that I do know, which is not many, maybe less than a dozen, or I've heard of. Either deal with science fiction or horror, and I think because I'm in the horror genre a lot more, I know more African American authors that do horror. So
that makes sense. That follows, but because you just know the people who are your contemporaries, it's kind of similar with me, because I pretty much write fantasy right now, and so I read a lot of fantasy, and I enjoy a lot of fantasy authors, but there's so little that I know so little about a lot of other fields at this point. Even though I was an English major, so I studied a lot of classics and stuff. Which not my favorite part of the degree, mind you. I was always a sci-fi guy and a fantasy guy at heart. So anyway, when did you got started with your writing career kind of after a long career doing other stuff, a lot of other interesting factors in your life, and I'm curious about what got you interested in doing that, I guess. Where did that come from? Especially because go on.
It's we can all probably be in solidarity with saying that most creatives that we know are creative in a lot of fields. From the time when I used to look at, the black and white films and fell in love with Sammy Davis Jr. and Fred Astaire and Frank Sinatra and those cats, they dance, they were singing, they were dancing, and some of my contemporaries, it's the same thing. They love acting, and then they're painting, and they're singing, and so they have a variety of different fields in entertainment as a creative that they do. I was no different. I actually started writing comic books because I'm a big comic book collector. I was since I was like 8 years old, and since I was eight, I started writing since I was eight, influenced by my father who used to write the Mighty Mouse. He actually used to draw and ink Mighty Mouse for Terry Toons.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I was influenced by him. And he actually created the first African-American superhero before Black Panther. 3 years before Black Panther, he created a character called Little Zing in 1963. Mm-hmm. So I've always been into that. I used to draw King Kong and Godzilla comic books, when I was 8, 9 years old. And then I fell into music and all genres, really, from rock to punk to hip hop to dance. I did a lot to country music. I did a lot of different genres, and then poetry and a little philosophy. So I was a big creative. It was just this wellspring of different things that I just had to get out. But it wasn't until I started studying how to write novels and taking classes, and I started writing novels that I found out that was the thing I needed to just kind of hone those skills and focus on, and that's where I found the most success.
Oh, interesting. So, and do you, with all those other creative fields, I mean, do you find writing kind of more intrinsically satisfying? Is there something more to it for you than just another creative activity?
Man, that's a hard question. You know why it's a hard question? Because I got to be honest with you. Music and film, and I'm jealous of it. As an author, I'm jealous of the entertainment. I'm jealous of actors. I'm jealous of musicians. But music is something that touches everyone's soul. It's on like a whole different, it's like on a whole different a wavelength. And it doesn't even have to be in the same language, and it can still touch someone's soul. And people they go through experiences, no matter what decade it was in, and they can relate to music in that way. And that's why it's such a big thing. And as much as I would love for most people to be readers, most people aren't readers. Most people don't read books. They might read one book every 4 or 5 years. But people watch TV every single day. A lot of people do. Most people probably. Yeah. And they definitely listen to music every single day, hours and hours. So to be most satisfying, man, I think I'll be incredibly satisfied to be standing on the stage, singing to, 15,000 people. You know what I mean?
Hard to beat that, I'd imagine. Yeah, that's the interesting part,
Yeah, or being in a scene with Meryl Streep, my favorite actor, or Al Pacino, being in a really cool scene with them, or Denzel, or Viola Davis. But all of that aside, it was the writing that I found the most success in.
Okay.
That was my niche. So yes, it's very satisfying to win an award, to win like best in the world, to be acknowledged by my contemporaries as having the best young adult novel in the world. That's beyond rewarding and satisfying. But I'd love to be on a stage with Ariana Grande or something like that, or Chris Cornell, rest in peace. But writing is a thing that I've been put on this earth to do.
Right. So I mean, I guess and I guess I find that fascinating because, like, with me, I mean, it's very different. I don't feel like I have a lot of other talents. I mean, I do podcast. I have podcasted for a while now, but I definitely have not found a ton of like actual success with my writing yet. And no, Tim. Oh, go on.
Timothy. What do you go by, Tim or Timothy?
Tim.
Tim. If I had been writing, since I was a teenager, like you were. How old were you when you first started?
Like 14, 13?
Come on,
something
man.
Like that.
If I would have been writing since I was 14 and have all these novels that you have, see, a lot of us aren't able to find out what we're put on this earth to do as early as you were. So that alone is a gift. You see what I mean?
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I guess I meant materially. I don't have that much. I don't have that many readers yet. People, I haven't been discovered, you might say. But I'm working on it. I'm not depressed about it. It's in process, right? I just got to get a little bit more out there, and it could happen at any time because I just, I'm putting out new books every year.
And you have a huge foundation to stand on. That's the basis of it all. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and yeah, that's a great point. I mean, having written, 4 or 5 million words by now, probably. I don't count anymore. It's not. That is actually that, like I said, that, like you said, it's a foundation. I can stand on that, and I have a skill that I've developed pretty much exclusively for most of my life. And I was just going at, that is a huge advantage for me, obviously, as far as writing. But I wanted to say that it always amazes me how much people who actually start work later in life, how many other advantages they have. Like, got people like you have this great advantage of all this experience that's beautiful, and there, you can draw from, and the great and the awful things that happen in your life that that led to you to this point. I mean, yeah, no wonder you can write a book that resonates with people because you've been there, you've done all that stuff, and you have a ton of experiences. I mean, like I said, positive or negative. There's a lot there. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't envy you necessarily, because obviously there's a lot of stuff there that I'm happy where I am to a large extent. Yeah. But it is fascinating how the difference doesn't change. Kind of the difference is like, okay, you've been writing. How long have you actually been writing novels? I guess. I mean, you told me how long I've been writing, but how long have you been doing it?
So I quit my nearly 6-figure job as a director at the Civil Learning Center, I think in 2006.
Okay.
It took me a couple of years to kind of figure it out. So I started writing in 2008.
Okay. So, I mean, really, we've been going at this almost the same amount of time. That's interesting. I mean, I'm like a few years ahead of you that way, but starting writing as a teenager is a lot different than starting writing as an adult. You know what I mean? You've got all this, like I said, the additional ammunition, you might say, all this additional fuel to go forward with.
Yeah.
Whereas,
say,
go on.
Experience plus exposure equals appreciation. Mm. You got to experience it. You got to be exposed to it first, and then experience it, and then you can really appreciate, based on experiences and exposure, what you've gone through. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, and there's all that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess there's all the time that you spend doing other things is not wasted. That's my biggest point. And it goes to show, because I mean, you got that Bram Stoker on the award on the chest on the shelves behind you. I mean, like that's impressive. And it's not.
Yes,
and
thank you.
If I had that much success in my first 5 books, as far as getting my work out there, well, I don't know. I'd be sitting in a slightly different position now. Let me tell you.
I think, I think it comes to the grass is always greener, because I truly believe that if I would have found out that writing was what I was supposed to do, and I found that out early in life, I would have, I wouldn't have to have a day job as a stand-in. That's my day job right now.
Okay.
As a stand-in in Hollywood. I wouldn't have to have that day job. I would be writing exclusively. And it would just be an outpour of all these stories that I've dreamed up or that are in me or through my experiences. So I don't know.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah. I feel like some of those experiences I went through, I won't use the term as a waste, but I definitely would have wanted to have focused way earlier in my life on what I'm doing now.
So, fair. That's a fair point, and it is a grass is always greener situation. I think. I mean, and not to mention obviously a different. I mean, we were born in different times. I mean, I think because I'm 1990. I was born in January 1990, so I'm. I don't want to talk about that too much, but I was still kind of in the middle, young, despite what I look like. Everyone thinks I'm way older when they see me, but that's not something the audience has to think about, because if you follow me on Twitter, you see I'm bald. I got gray in my beard now. It's like, okay, I've looked this way for 10 years.
You got a lot of personality right here. That's a lot of personality.
Oh, I appreciate it. No, this is not a visual show. People can check it out. I mean, people can see me. Like I said, my Twitter profile, that's what I look like still, basically. Yeah. A little grayer than that when that photo was taken. But I guess the the thing that is interesting to me here is not necessarily that. I guess I would feel like it was a shame if I went through all that life and felt like I didn't have enough to show for it. That's too bad, man. But it's. Yeah, but hey, you can't do much about it now except do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right forward.
Exactly. Yep. I agree.
So when you approach, so having established that you've got this deep well, more or less, you could draw from, and probably do draw from, I'd assume, and we all take things from our lives. Yeah. Though I always feel like, okay, one brief thing about me, I feel like with all my books, they all resonate with the period in which I wrote them in my life. So it's this interesting situation where, like, when I was a kid, and I suffered from psychosis as a teenager, more or less, autistic. Psychosis and depression, probably depression anyway. I wasn't diagnosed with that until later. But my earlier books are way more dark and nasty than my new books. Like, there's a lot meaner stuff in them, and the characters are meaner to each other. It's just generally a more... I think there's still joy in those books, though, and most of them are not published. There's still joy in those books, but until until about 2007, I was, which is the start of my senior year of high school, I was a really troubled kid. And then in 2007, I got on this one particular medication, and it has changed my life completely. I mean, I don't suffer from the psychosis. It was an antipsychotic medication. And after that, my books just suddenly they stopped being about, these kind of dark and impossible situations that nobody's gonna get through that unscarred, and they changed. But now I can zoom in on other books. In 2019 I wrote this book that was about that kind of thematically, like, the theme of the book is so easy to look back on. The theme was about learning a new ability, like learning a skill, and because I was picking up dictation for the first time. And I can see why that happened. That was the first novel I dictated, and it was about learning dictation, kind of. So I guess what I'm saying is it's interesting, because I feel like I'd always draw on the present more than on the past when I create books. So maybe my point about the well was wrong. I'm just second guessing myself here.
No, that's a great point, and I think that I don't know. I can't really even talk about other authors. I can only talk about myself, but. We talk a lot, when I do these shows, I'm always asked about the process, the approach writing your books the same way. How do you approach writing your books, And, maybe if you would have asked me when I wrote my first novel, I would have had this really laid out approach. I do this, I do that, I studied Christopher Vogler's. I follow his list, and I write a list of this down, and, I do Alexander Sokolov's, I put, note cards down, and I break everything down in my story elements. But now, on my fifth novel, and this novel in particular, I wouldn't have been able to write it the way I'm writing it now if I would have written it 5 years ago. Okay. And I feel like now each book is a reflection, like you just said, of the present, of what it's like, how the kids say today, it's a vibe thing, or it's a mood thing, it's a vibe. And that's how I write my novels, based on my mood. And mood being metaphorically meaning what I've experienced and what I've been influenced by at that time, at that period of time, So now, if I would have, a few years ago, if I would have really, when I read a whole bunch of different horror books and zombie books, that's where my head was at. Yeah. And now, I read and I watch a lot of police procedurals, and Sherlock Holmes type stuff. Yeah. And that's where my head is at. And maybe next year I'll be reading a lot of stuff about the metaverse, which actually a lot of my books have to do with the metaverse. But I didn't even know it didn't have a term when I wrote Owari Mosaic, which was the one that won the Brown Stoker. But that character actually was solving cold cases in the metaverse. It just wasn't called that when I wrote the book. Okay. But each book, my process is different for each book because my mood is different.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's definitely a big factor. I mean, like that book I mentioned in 2019. One of the reasons I started dictating is I felt like I got my first good sleep in maybe 5 or 6 years because I had sleep apnea that was diagnosed earlier so I finally got a CPAP machine, and then now it's whatever. I felt like I woke up finally after being asleep for my whole 20s, basically.
It's a big difference when you are well rested. That's
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I was a zombie, like I said, for years, and it's a sad state of affairs. But it's one of those things that you don't even know how bad it was until you get out of it. But the suddenly finding the key, like finding a trick to something, or finding exactly the right method, like you were talking about there, like when you're early on, that's what people often do focus on, And I find that like you were saying, intuition, following your mood is actually generally the best way to roll, at least for me. And following my mood, in this case.
I think being a creative, and I'm just going to speak on film, dance, music, and writing. I don't really, maybe painting, I'm not really sure. But being a creative, sometimes you're at your most intriguing or your most expressionistic when you are going through your darkest periods.
Yes. Yeah.
So when you're happy and all of that, you can't even pull. It doesn't translate the same, and people don't relate to the happiness as much as they can relate to the darkness, the sadness, the pain, the anger. And so, in a way, I wouldn't be surprised if a few years from now you look back and say, "Wow, the books I wrote earlier they really
had something."
Yeah, they struck an emotion. And it's not like you want to go back to that feeling, You
just need to capture it. You use it again. Yeah. Use the same kind of feeling.
Yeah. And that's what actors do, They go back and they capture that feeling of that pain to do that emotional scene, or some actors, So I don't really knock the pain I went through, because if I hadn't gone through all of that pain and my first wife passing away and my mother and my brother and all these people in my lives passing away, I wouldn't be able to write I wouldn't be able to write the way that I'm writing now. My heart getting broken, that kind of thing. So I don't knock it. I just think that that's part of life, and that's what makes life so beautiful. I think that's what really makes it beautiful. Without the pain and the hardships and death and darkness, it wouldn't be as beautiful.
I have to agree. I mean, I like a lot of dark media kind of as a result. I'm a huge metal fan, big heavy metal fan. Even though like I'm from Minnesota, so I mean it's kind of obligatory because as someone who to say that I mean Prince is great, but I really like darker material. A lot of the time, like heavier stuff, and I mean amazing rock and roll, but. There's that until you get to Black Sabbath, it's like okay, or whatever, I still or whatever band, Iron Maiden, any of the classics like that, which I'm all over all the time.
Any bats, if you're not biting, if you're biting a bat,
Yeah. that was Ozzy.
Not Alice.
That was Ozzy Osbourne.
Ozzy.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe he's still with us. Great he is, but it's wild. You can't go around eating bats.
I love that story. That's amazing.
It's great. I mean, but it is funny that now I don't know if he would do that if he was if you de-aged him somehow. He wouldn't go back if he had to do it again. I mean, especially with the rumors about certain diseases started.
He didn't know it was a real bat.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Okay.
Yeah, and so he just went with it. I mean, what else are you gonna do when you're on stage?
Right.
He just went with it. He probably said so many expletives to whoever gave him that bat that he broke the record.
Oh yeah, that makes it actually way funnier to me because I mean, just killing a helpless bat isn't particularly cool to me. But if he it's still it's a crazy story and it's fascinating and it's interesting for that reason. But it is kind of like he didn't even know it was real. That's amazing.
Yeah,
he wasn't doing that deliberately, potentially. So yeah, I mean, there's so much there, but when you write when you approach, I don't. Geez, I'm losing my thread here. This is what happens when you go a little. We're running a little low on time because the show runs quick. But I just got to say, I'm gonna have to check out your books now because this is just you're a fascinating dude, and I'm looking forward to. I don't know which one I'm gonna pick up. I roll the dice because I can't ever decide these things in advance. And I guess that's what I'm trying to get at with fiction too. Is I don't decide what's going to happen in advance, especially now.
Yeah.
When I write a book, I really am. I don't even know if discovery writing is the right way to think of it. It's more like really rapid decision making.
Yeah.
Like I'm steering. I don't go in cruise control when I'm writing books. I can't. And I guess, I mean, now that I'm going back to dictation, and I can do 3 chapters in an hour, 6,000 words an hour.
Wow.
That's real. That's like a light speed, hyperspeed, driving a car through space kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like this conversation has been helpful for me. I don't know why. I'm just thinking, whatever. I got to get off my soapbox here.
What?
I'm thinking that there's always this element of seeing it far enough ahead, just far enough ahead, that you can write that next scene. At least with me. And I feel like driving but you also have to make sure you got the energy to get there. And I think I've neglected that a little bit, I guess is what I'm getting at. I mean, I need to look back because I'm happier than I've been in a long time most days. And I need to draw on that the dark stuff and stop being, because not a book shouldn't necessarily. A book is about, I mean, a novel, especially the kind I write. They're heroic fantasy. They're about conflict and violence and action and stuff like that. And that's not something that you can necessarily come at from a perspective where you're more or less satisfied with your position. I kind of think, and do it in a genuine way. I mean, I'm sure somebody's can figure that out, but you need to. But at least drawing on the past where I was much more troubled could be very handy for me.
I think so because, it's crazy. Look at what's most popular on TV today. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on your career, and it's a lot of reality TV.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've watched more than 2 hours of reality TV in the last 20 years. But I know what it's about, and I've seen clips. And people are the most outlandish, most ridiculous, most, just violent and hostile. And people eat that up. One, because a lot of people can relate to that, and they go through the dysfunction themselves in their own families. And so it's the relate factor. If someone can relate to it, if they can relate to your character, even though you have, that's why when I see, I didn't watch the full series of The Boys, but when I see characters like Jessica, the Marvel character.
Jessica Jones.
Yeah, when I see characters like that, personally, I love those characters more than I love a character that's just like crispy clean.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, because I just can relate to it. And I think a lot of people relate more to a troubled or anti-hero than they do a hero. And so I think it's cool to go back and go into some of the dark side. But what did Yoda say? Yoda said, Master Yoda said, how did he say it? Oh, I have it somewhere. Be careful when you look at the dark side, for it looks back. Something like that.
Something like that, yeah. But there's also that element of, it reminds me of another Star Wars line, exchange from that, I think this is the second Star Wars Episode 5, the second original movie. Which was, Luke asks him, what's in the cave? What's in that cave? And he says, only what you take with you. And you got to bring the tool. You got to bring it with you.
Yes.
So Yoda. Still, there's a lot of good wisdom in those original movies. I mean, they're very very interesting.
I've worked with Grogu, by the way. I've worked with Baby Yoda.
Oh yeah.
And and let me tell you, Grogu is one of the most fascinating creatures I've ever worked with. And everyone, when Grogu comes on set, no one can take their eyes off of him. He's the most amazing creature. And I'm saying that so literally. He's the most amazing creature that I've ever. I haven't worked in a scene. Well, I kind of have with him, but he's one of the most amazing entities or creatures that I've ever worked with. And
Wow.
yeah, so he's amazing. Yeah.
So one last question, quick, because we are about out of time. But so sorry, but this is a good note to go out on. But I'm curious, how did they make Grogu? How does he come into being? I'm just curious because I don't know. I assumed he was like CG, but I could not tell.
No one knows. If you've watched the stories, no one knows yet where he comes from.
Ah, okay.
Okay, and if you feel the vibe and how I'm speaking about him, it's because I really believe that he's real.
All right, that's a good answer.
He is real.
I'll take that.
He is real. He is real. Yeah. So we don't know where he comes from yet in the stories. Maybe that will be revealed in the Mandalorian that they just finished shooting. Maybe that will be revealed or in the next book of Boba Fett. But we don't know that yet. But we do know he's a very unique being in our universe.
Fair enough. Or in a galaxy far, far away, too. Yeah.
Yeah. In a galaxy far, far away.
Well, Nzondi, thanks for being on the show. Tell people where they can find your books and, where they can find your website if you got one of those. Anything you want to point people to.
Hey, man, I would be really, really grateful, listening land, if you just go on Google and you Google Nzondi author, or you go to Amazon. I have two books there on Amazon. One is called Lipstick Asylum, which is a really cool book, especially if you're into video games, Resident Evil, very strong female heroines. And the book that won the Bram Stoker is A Wari Mosaic. And, it's about a young girl who basically solved homicide or murder cases in the metaverse. And somehow or another, a case in the metaverse became a real case that she was involved in. So, you can go there and look those up, or you can go on Twitter and come hang out with me on Twitter. My pen name on Twitter, or my handle is @Nzondi and the number 3. So N as in Nancy, ZON, D as in David, I, NZONDI and the number 3. Or you can go on Instagram and look me up under my pseudonym, Ace Antonio Hall. Nzondi is actually my real middle name.
Oh.
Or you can go on Instagram and look up Ace Antonio Hall. And it also has in parentheses Nzondi. And you can check me out and follow me. I'd love it.
Awesome. That was such a great conversation, sir. And if you can find if you found this podcast, you probably don't need to know you don't need me to tell you where to find more of them. But mentalcellarpublications.com is where you can download all the episodes. And you can also find my books at timniederreiter.com/books. One last thing, I am on Twitter. I'm at @tniederreiter. So if you can spell my last name, it's all there. But I'm not going to bother spelling it for you. We don't have that much time, folks. But I'll talk to you again next week. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much to Nzondi. And stay safe out there, everybody. I'll find out if you get in trouble. Take it easy. Bye-bye. 1 second here. The old mouse.
That tears it.